to Broadcast Team Alpha, where we bring you cutting-edge conversation while exploring the quantum possibilities. Broadcast Team Alpha, where we bring you cutting-edge conversation. So our guest is playing with us tonight. Not our guest in the physical, our other guest. Bear with me 1 minute, guys. So sorry. All right.
Strange.
Strange things are happening, guys, which was good because I had just gotten a lump in my throat and I was about to cry, and that little weird electronic thing that happened made me stop. So I just wanted to say that, you know, we're going to be exploring the quantum possibilities, in a different way tonight. And I'm trusting that our beloved friend and truth seeker, Jordan Maxwell, is right here with us. I absolutely know that he is. And tonight's going to be a very special night in his honor. So thanks for being here. Thanks for celebrating Jordan with us. The last time he was on our show, he was forthcoming that he was preparing to go non-physical, which he obviously did. So thanks for being in the chat room. I see you guys getting started already. Thank you for following us at broadcastteamalpha.com. Thank you for the super chats. And without any further ado, Augie, please introduce our guest.
Yes, I think we're going to have two guests here tonight. One of them is the one you're looking at on the screen, and that's Bret. And the other one, maybe Jordan Maxwell, because we did send him a message, and I think he got the call. Because twice now there has been a break-in of something that is not on any of our computers. It is just there somehow coming through. So this is going to be interesting. And by the way, Jordan, we're going to talk nice about you. But I want to say a few things about Bret first. And he has a degree in journalism and an option in public relation. And that probably can explain a little bit why he has done what he has done later, like written about 700 articles on music, alternative histories written on UFOs, and spirituality for magazines like Phenomena Magazine, Magical Blend Magazine, the UFO Magazine, and there's several others. He has written in the process of putting out 2 books, and that's going to be interesting. I want to mention the titles for them because I want you to write that down, put it behind or in your brain. So when that happens, this is going to be good. One of them is, let's see, where did I write that? That's going to be, yeah, hang on just a second here. I am so brilliant, I lose myself. And yeah, I'll find it in a second. Besides that, he can tell us. Now, I also know that he has had contact with and worked with the ambassador from Telos. Telos is that city underneath in Northern California, Mount Shasta. And there is hundreds of people from different parts of the world that has been there and had contacts. So he is one of them, and he has something to say about that. That's going to be very interesting. But we're going to have to make you wait on that one to the second half of the show, because we want you to hear the first one also about Jordan Maxwell. And he speaks very eloquently, straight from the heart. And we are all looking for answers. So maybe tonight, possibly, we can find some answers. And we're going to talk stories about Jordan Maxwell, because Nori and I have interviewed Jordan, I believe, 4 times. Now she's nodding, so it's got to be 4. And with that, welcome to the show, Bret.
Thank you very much, Augie Nori. Always a pleasure.
Welcome, Bret.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be with you two wonderful people.
Oh, so great to
Thanks for
have
having me on.
you. So great to have you.
Yeah.
I know, that was a big exhale for me too. So I wonder what he's doing tonight, besides being here with us. I wonder how it is on his dimension. And it would be wonderful if he gave us a sign tonight, right? Bret, what was your last contact or time with him, or where should we start?
That's a good place as any to start. I think the last time I saw him in person was in 2010 at the Bay Area UFO Expo, what turned out to be the last Bay Area UFO Expo, which is kind of ironic, I guess, because that's where I first saw him, was at the very first Bay Area UFO Expo. And after learning about Jordan in this little nifty book right here called The Book Your Church Doesn't Want You to Read,
Yeah.
Jordan did a really interesting passage in there about astrotheology and how our religions are based on heavenly bodies and planets and stars and so forth, especially the sun. So when I saw him last in 2010, I had gotten to know him pretty well at that stage. And I was working with him, kind of closely. And he was unveiling some of his stuff to me. I had just prior to that, I released the part 3 of my UFO Magazine trilogy about his work, where I kind of flushed out of him this overarching theory called the magic of society, where he said that the world was ruled by magic. He said that early on for me, but I really didn't understand what it was until I was able to produce the trilogy. So the last time I saw him at the party on Sunday night, I got to introduce him to Pato Banton, a Grammy award-winning reggae guy who I had invited to the expo. And because, for me, there's a huge crossover between UFOs, spirituality, and reggae music. And the linchpin there, the golden thread there would be consciousness. And so Jordan, in his own way, was exploring consciousness, a master of symbols, and the ancient origins of symbols and how they've filtered through to today, in today's corporate America, especially. And so it was really cool getting to hang out with Jordan at that last party, interacting with a reggae superstar and all the other. I mean, I met George Lasukalos that night from Ancient Aliens. The Ancient Aliens was just kind of getting kicked off. Had only been around for a couple of years at that stage.
Wow. So
really interesting mix of people. And of course, Jordan always wanting to share his knowledge, and he liked it when younger people were interested in what he had to say, because what he had to say is important for all of us, especially given the situation that we see today. When you mix COVID into the factor and realize that COVID, when you do the research, is a manufactured, weaponized virus that has been planned for a long time. They've been perfecting this over the last series of viruses, SARS and H1N1, swine flu, bird flu. All this stuff is really, they're just getting, meaning the elites, getting more expert at creating these kinds of things, and then creating the excuse for vaccines. So while guys like Jordan were predicting this 30 years ago, I was in over my head. I was just like, wow, this sounds fascinating. I know I want to learn more, but I really didn't think something like that could be serious. But Jordan saw this coming way ahead of time, wrote about it in his books, talked about it in his in interviews, talked about it in his lectures. And so, looking back on that last time I saw Jordan in 2010, I'm kind of kicking myself. I didn't hound him a little bit more for his attention. But he's always at those events, he's pulled from many directions, people wanting his time and his knowledge. And, there was times in the past at the Bay Area UFO Expo where if you walked through the lobby of the Marriott Hotel in Santa Clara, you might see a crowd of people and you're going, well, what's this crowd of people doing here? And there's Jordan in the middle of it, like at midnight.
I love it.
Talking, and then people would gather around him as if he was the benevolent grandfather who was dispensing wisdom that all the grandkids wanted to hear. Maybe like might happen for some of your viewers at Christmas time when the families get together.
Yeah.
And grandpa or grandma's going to tell some stories, right? Well, Jordan was one of those kind of figures. And he loved sharing that kind of stuff. So that was the last time I saw Jordan in 2010. And you know, he had some interesting business dealings, and we kind of got out of touch. And then he moved to Arizona. And so I was literally for the last like 6 months thinking to myself, you know, I gotta try to talk to him again, maybe do one last interview. And then I found out he passed. So that was, I think, January, February, I forget. But I was pretty bummed I didn't get at least one last chance to see him. He's was integral to my understanding of the world. I considered him to be my friend, and God bless you, Jordan. We all love you.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, he's here with us, so you can tell him now.
Yeah. Well, I love you, Jordan, right? So thank you for everything you've done for us. And despite the pushback from the powers that be, your message is getting out there. And in the end, I think Jordan was a seed that will grow into a beautiful tree of rebellion in a good sense, for the benefit of humanity, to wake itself back up and take its power back. So in the end, I think Jordan will go down as a hero. I know Brian Hall, the former organizer of ConspiracyCon, called Jordan a national treasure.
Yes.
And I couldn't agree more. And in the end, I think he'll wind up being a world treasure. But you know, for right now, we could just call him a national treasure and let history determine that world treasure title in the end.
You know, Jordan,
he was that important. So yeah, go ahead. I'm rambling. Go ahead.
Okay, that's all right. Jordan has been on this mission 60 years, probably, in a small way, maybe in the first 10 or so, and then it accelerated. But he had a very interesting start where he more or less got his direction set from where he was going to go through his girlfriend of just a few days, when she told him, "My parents wants to talk to you." Maybe you know that story. Maybe you could talk about it, because it's so fascinating to me that these things actually happen to people.
You know, it's been a while since I've talked about that story, but I am familiar with that story, and I actually wrote about it in UFO Magazine. Let's see, this is issue 145, volume 3, number 4. I think it's from 2007. There's the cover right there. All right, this was the middle article, or no, I guess it was the last article in the trilogy. But he told me about this for my interview when I did this. So let me just read a little passage here from this article. Acting on a feeling, he headed west to Los Angeles at the age of 19 without direction. He held several part-time jobs before he met an important girl. After they had dated a few times, he says she took him to meet her father. It was this girl's father who would crystallize in his mind his life's purpose. So here's a quote from Jordan. "From the moment I met him, I knew that I was not in the company of a normal man. There was something about this man, the way he moved and spoke. I was fascinated by his spirit and the words he used. Then we began to chit-chat, and he began to describe an incident that happened to me when I was an 8-year-old. So apparently this person was, whatever form he was in as this girl's dad, he maybe had some kind of alternate existence, maybe, or maybe he was connected in on some level, right? Mm-hmm. So Jordan continues. He described the incident to me exactly how it happened, right down to the memory of the funny smell of the green wood, and said that he heard me when I said a prayer to God, asking to do something good with my life. And he said that he heard me because he was there. Pretty incredible, huh?
Very incredible.
Okay, so I think it goes one more quote here. He says, then he asked me if what he had described was accurate, and I told him that it was right in every detail. Then he said to me, how did I know that? And it gave me a really weird feeling. He then pulled out a book that he wanted me to read called The Complete Works of Charles Fort, a classic, by the way, and seemingly randomly opened to a page, and what he read just blew my mind. Then another page, and that one blew my mind. Then we began to hang out, and he told me about UFOs as if it was from firsthand experience. He said that I was led to LA And then the family moved several weeks later without telling me, and I never saw him again. So how's that for a 19-year-old getting a paranormal experience and direction in his life? I wish I had that at 19. Boy, I was a wild child at 19 myself. So, but that kind of set the course of his life.
Yeah. And then right after that, he had that experience with her dad. A little while later, he went back and they were gone. The house was empty. There were nobody there.
Yeah.
Nobody told him.
It was like that was just meant for him.
Yeah.
And how you can create a whole house and a family for just a message for a young man, I'm not exactly sure, but the word paranormal comes to mind. Right? So those kind of things seem to follow him around from that point forward. To my knowledge, he didn't really get started with the heavy studies until the 80s. And at some point he met Manly P. Hall, and I can't help but thinking that Manly P. Hall was part of his journey. You know, if only we could talk to Manly P. Hall and ask him right now how it was you met Jordan. I'll bet Manly P. Hall would say he was the guy that the Spirit told me about that I was to teach. I bet that he would say something like that. So, you know, one of the really most memorable times I was with Jordan, he invited me down to his home office in Tarzana, and I drove down there on a really, really tight budget, but I knew how important it was. So I made it happen. Right. And, giving me a tour of his office, he showed me the handwritten journals of Manly P. Hall. And I was just blown away because at the time I was buying spiral ring binder paper, like folders from Chico State that it said Chico State University on it. And that's where I graduated with the journalism and ops and public relations. But so I was collecting these spiral ring journals, binders, and taking notes. And it was like, wow, Manly P. Hall, this legend, did the same thing. He had handwritten notes. And so that just seeing that really gave me a confidence booster that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And of course, he had a leather-bound copy, a full color calligraphy of Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And supposedly Manly Hall wrote that book. It's almost 700 pages. He wrote that when he was 19. And so I'm thinking to myself, you know, I'm 54 right now. I've got 2 books out. You could combine both books and it's not even as thick as Manly P. Hall's book when he was 19. So just to give you an idea of the intellect of Manly P. Hall and Jordan's biggest mentor, Manly P. Hall. So for someone like Manly P. Hall to teach Jordan, that really says a lot about Jordan as well.
Yeah.
And Jordan had this huge intellect and a huge heart. So that story blew me away when he told me about that. It's the kind of stuff that legends are made of, you know, a mysterious being giving you a secret message that plants the seeds that blossoms in your life at some later point in time. And then for who Jordan turned out to be after that, it's just it's legendary. It's mythological. It's the stuff of legends. That's the best way I can put it.
Well, oh, Nora, you're muted.
He said yes to it. I wonder how many of us had, you know, a seed like that in the beginning, and we said, yeah, that's a little weird. No, that doesn't fit in with my parents' paradigm. No, that's not in agreement with the church. And we just, you know, pushed it away. But instead of doing that, right, he was like hungry for it. He was voracious. He was a truth seeker. I mean, he was just such a seeker. And, you know, what he could talk about with the Bible, I could listen to him for hours.
Right.
You know, the way that he would speak to the future based on the Bible, and not the usual, you know, interpretation of the Bible.
That's
just
right.
Phenomenal. I loved him. Love him so much.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting because he tied a lot of the Bible's imagery and symbolism back to ancient Egypt, and this thing called astrotheology that I mentioned before. So
Yes.
Mhm.
he traces the origins of our modern religion back to solar worship and sun gods, and that Jesus was a sun god, and one in a line of a long line of sun gods, including Osiris or
Yes.
Horus from the Egyptian pantheon. So just in its most basic way, basic description, the sun gave us light. Our own real sun gave us light, and when the sun went away, there was darkness. And so
Yes.
just that basic dichotomy
Mhm.
set the stage for good and evil as we
Yes.
perceive
Yeah.
it today. And when I'd heard that, I was pretty blown away. I'd never heard something so profound be stated so simply. And of course, that branches off into a whole myriad of different topics, including the creation of the zodiac, which is the sun on a cross. He shows that in some of his books, the cross at churches that have the circle around it, or circle as part of the cross. He says
Yes.
that's where that stems from. And he's got that tag that he was anti-Christian, or that he was a pagan or something because of that. I disagree. I'm a Christian. I'm learning how to be a Christian. And I don't think that shakes my faith in Jesus at all.
Exactly.
Because we had to have it start somehow, some way. And that seems like as plausible of a way for it to start on earth as anything. So the origins of Christianity weren't just about beings coming down to earth and giving people visionary experiences, although that's a big part of it. We could definitely talk about who Jesus was and the different theories there.
Yeah.
But for me, it just solidifies the fact that on earth, in this plane, in 3D material reality, as we call it, things have to take on a certain form and manifest in a certain way in order for them to interface with this particular kind of reality. So while it sounds great that and I'm not denying this, that a divine being could come to earth and teach the earth people, that God's children, about the ways of God, there's also this whole part about the material reality is supposedly some of the most dense reality in the universe. And so if a divine force is going to teach its beings in this reality, you have to deal with the terms of this reality. So why not give us a symbolic start like night and day
Yes.
to help shape our minds towards this end at some point in the future? So to me, it makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. I think I might have a
Beautiful.
little
Love that.
picture here of an early
Okay.
zodiac sign that Jordan's talking about. This is from the book Your Church Doesn't Want You to Read, right here. Everyone should run
Yeah.
out and get a copy of this book. It's pivotal. But here's a picture of the zodiac that he's talking about right there. I don't know if you can read that, but there's the cross,
Yep.
like a more square cross, but it's cross with a little solar symbol in the middle. And this has led to the formation of modern religion, and also the things that modern religion kind of speaks out against, things like astrology or tarot or numerology, these kinds of things. So it's interesting to me, it's always been interesting to me how those two opposing sides today really have roots in the same kind of philosophy.
Yes.
So Jordan was
Absolutely.
pivotal in pointing that out for me and
Yes.
many, many others.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think tarot cards and symbolism is better explained through quantum mechanics than actually how the Christian church or any church will deny its viability, because
Well, how would
it
you?
is there.
Yeah, how would you explain the tarot through quantum physics?
Well, we are connecting to the universal source through the card. Now, I've never done the cards, but I see people doing it, and some of them are really good at it. So they are connecting through the symbolism of the cards to the universal mind or other things out there that is available to answer questions. And I think that can be defended, that it actually is that way. Now, what we know, many of the religions, they say, oh, don't do this, don't do that, because it's not in our book. Well, they don't understand it, and that is why they would deny it. It's just like there's a lot of people running around saying Jesus never existed. No, he did. There's enough evidence out there. Reading the surviving Roman records and Tacitus and some of the other writers of those days, yes, he was there. He was a phenomenal man. He did phenomenal things. So we shouldn't take anything away from that.
You know, I think you make a good point, Augie, because a large chunk of fundamental Christianity says that those kind of things, tarot, astrology, these kinds of things are satanic. Yeah. And so while I will defend Jordan as still being a Christian and a man that believed in Jesus, I'll actually defend at least some viewpoints by the fundamental church as well. For example, the book The Art of War is a powerful book that, along with the Bible, I would say, or the book your church doesn't want you to read, I would say everyone needs to own the book The Art of War, because this is what we're involved in. You can see this with COVID playing out. You can see this with China or Russia acting on the United States over the last several decades. This is all part of the art of war. All these different things have been mapped out. So it's my contention that the reason why many churches see things like tarot and astrology and numerology, et cetera, as satanic is because if those things were originally given to humanity as a strength, they're tools to bring consciousness or humanity closer to God, then it makes sense to me that the enemy, if we do have an enemy, and I think we do, the enemy would, in the basic art of war strategy, would usurp our strengths and then attack us at our weaknesses. So if at one point in time in the past, tarot was our strength, then it makes sense that the dark forces would attack that and take it over. And same, you just go down the list. They would seek to cut us off from our spirituality, from our connection to God, and then attack us where we're most vulnerable, that being our physical bodies, being tempted by the flesh, being tempted by creature comforts. A late great friend of mine, William Henderson Everyone, used to call the situation on earth a tiptoe tyranny, where the tyranny happens so slow and incrementally that we don't really notice it happening. And that's because in a basic art of war strategy, you cut off the strengths of your opponent or your enemy, and then you attack them at their weaknesses. And I think you can, once you see world history through that lens, it really makes a lot of sense. Yep. And that's just one of the reasons why I think we are involved in the middle of a spiritual battle between light and dark. And Jordan revealing information that the dark side does not want out there, truth about the history. I think he was attacked on many levels. I think, I don't know if you guys have ever heard him on Coast to Coast with George Norrie, but I wrote about this in my first book, Song in Your Heart, The Story of the Search for the Lost Note. I was actually with William Henderson Everyone, and we were listening to a show that Jordan did back in 2003, I believe it was. And as he's describing what a check is, you know, you write a check for a bill or something. As he's describing that, he was just about to get to the part where he described the all caps name account, and boom, he was cut off the air.
Of course he was.
Yeah. And so as a young budding researcher, I got a real kick out of that. And I think the dark forces shot themselves in the foot, because if they would have let him just explain it, it would have been fascinating enough. But the fact that they cut him off, or that it, you know, a coincidence that he got cut off right at that time, exactly, that just blew my mind and made me want to know even more.
Exactly.
So, right. So that's what Jordan's work did, is it went from ancient history right to modern law, of the occult side of modern law, in a sentence. He could connect the two. And he's inspired me to study the law myself. He had these ambassador plates on his car, And he
What,
was,
what were they? What were they?
they were ambassador license plates on his car. And he was the ambassador to some indigenous Hawaiian group. And the name of the indigenous Hawaiian group escapes me at the moment. But I remember asking him about that. And he was explaining to me how he was not in the jurisdiction of the vehicle code. And so the cops technically couldn't pull him over. Didn't stop the cops from doing that, because that's what cops do. They're poorly trained, and they don't like to actually read what the law is. They just take orders like a Nazi soldier,
They're machines.
and revenue generate. So he still got harassed, but nonetheless, that inspired me to start learning about the law. So in the second hour, we can talk a little bit more about that. I got a DVD I just produced called An American Law Primer, which has its roots in my teaching in Time with Jordan. So
Okay, I see we're at the bottom of the hour, so let's take just a 30 maybe a minute break and run the video, and then maybe Nori could talk a little bit afterwards about that.
Super. All right. Grab some water.
Hey guys, we're back. So we're just gonna talk a quick minute about what we're doing with the Quantum Health and Lifestyle show. There's going to be two streams to broadcast Team Alpha. The one that you've been accustomed to with, ufology and truthers and, oh my goodness, conspiracy theories, right? That have suddenly come true. How did that work? And talking about the greats like Jordan himself, and that's gonna keep going. But we're noticing that, especially right now, because of the planetary alignment is like off the hook, there's a lot going on. And there's a lot of people who are experiencing things, not just from the planetary alignment, but from disclosure, which is coming out, right? I found a mainstream article today that talked about, disclosure, like X amount of UFOs have been documented, so it's all coming out, right? All of these conspiracy theories that we've been talking about for a couple of years, it's all really happening. Now, the people who, are like us, it's not going to be like a sledgehammer up against our head. But for some people who really didn't think that all of this is happening, it's rough on them. And when it's rough on them, it's rough on those people who are our friends, who are family, who are our coworkers. And Broadcast Team Alpha is going to open up the discussions to professionals and healers and caregivers and wisdom people and priests and priestesses to help us live in this physical body while we embody everything that we've come to do and weather these massive changes that are happening so quickly. So that's the long story about why we're doing that. So let's talk more about Jordan. He was like the original conspiracy theorist. He was so out there, and and I loved him with his New York Jewish way. Was he even Jewish? I don't know, but
I don't think so, no.
Well, just with his his New York way, I loved him, and he was just unapologetic, and he's here. I know he's here right now.
Yeah, he's here listening.
Yeah, he called it his Gestalt method of teaching, where
Gestalt, yes.
Yeah, he didn't really care. I think he did care, but he didn't care if you didn't understand it. He was just laying it down And he felt that those that were meant to know, it's a spiritual thing, in other words, would be fired up to go learn more.
Exactly.
So he didn't feel it was his business to explain every little detail of every little thing. He was the trigger that was going to trigger a certain amount of the population to be excited about going and learning this stuff. So
yes,
Yeah.
I know when I told him, and it really, I felt like it took a lot of guts for me to tell him this, but I told him that it took a couple David Icke books and a Michael Tsarion book before I really understood what Jordan was talking about. He was speaking over my head, and I wasn't ashamed to admit that, but I was real nervous telling him that. And that's when he told me, he said, that's just my Gestalt approach. Some people get it, some people don't. So what? Whatever the case is, he's the seeds that planted in people like me and influenced people like Michael Tsarion or David Icke or William Henry, many others.
yes.
And that was his role. And so, I don't know if you guys remember back in high school. I mean, I'm getting a little up there, so I have to really stretch back to remember in high school. But before I really got excited about public speaking, we'd have to do a 5 or 10 minute speech before the end of the year. And nobody wanted to raise their hand to go first, right?
Yes.
So, but the teacher would say, whoever goes first is going to be graded easier, as a way to kind of get someone to go first, right? So I kind of see Jordan in that way.
Right.
He was first in our era, at least. There's many people that came before him. Jordan himself was standing on the shoulders of giants, just like we're standing on the shoulders of giants. So there's a rich tradition of scholars that have come before Jordan, but Jordan in this era, he just planted a bunch of seeds everywhere, and he didn't necessarily know where they're going to sprout up. But I think enough of these philosophical weeds are growing now to where I think humanity has hope to overcome the situation that we're in now. So yeah, that Gestalt approach, it has its good points,
Exactly. And for me personally, my best teachers were like Jordan. They planted the seed, and you could sit there and look at them like, go ahead, give me more. But they'd be like, did you see the seed?
Yeah.
Go find it. Right? That's the best teacher. You have to go find it yourself. It's not the same when somebody just gives you the answer. You don't get it. You don't get the benefit of that lesson. You don't get the glory of doing the work, and sometimes walking through the pain of learning. It's not always easy. And not, not all of Jordan's life was easy. He had that situation that happened where some people came against him and did something with his website, which eventually did something with his finances. And it made me so sad, to know that pained him so deeply at times. So,
yeah.
But anyway, an incredible teacher, in his high point, in his low point, he was still the most incredible teacher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Jordan, go ahead, Augie. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that he put it out there, and anything additional to what he was talking, that was our job to go research on our own. That's kind of like I used to do: go to the library, grab 8 books, stack them, and sit there for 4 hours looking for something. Or now these days we get on the internet and we get 14 pages down into an article. That's where we find. And when we do find it that way, we never forget, because we work at it, we earn it.
And you take notes, and the act of taking notes, writing it down, really seems to sink it into your brain.
Yes.
And there was go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Let me get out on one of the branches of this tree we're on. I remember one time in an interview, that was quite a while ago, that Jordan talked about Mount Shasta and who is in there. There is a civilization either inside or down below, right in that location. And he talked about that. And that brought me to something that you said on I think on a previous interview we did, you said you had a contact with an ambassador from Telos, which is the name of the city down there at
Yes.
Mount Shasta.
Yeah.
Could you talk on that a little bit? Because that is fascinating to me.
Yeah. So, you know, in my own way, it's kind of like one of Jordan's moments when he was young and met that lady's father, that girl's father. For me, I was writing for UFO Magazine at the time in the 2000s, and they kept having this ad in their magazine of a book by Diane Robbins called Messages from the Hollow Earth. And it showed an Earth globe in space, and a quarter chunk of it was taken out and light was just shooting out of it as if the Earth was hollow on the inside. And so, you know, it really, talk about symbolism, that really kind of fired me up. And I finally asked my editor, Nancy Burns at the time, Bill Burns' wife, I said, what's up with this book? And Nancy just came alive and she said, you know what, Diane Robbins is like one of our best advertisers, and we've been wanting someone to go up to Mount Shasta and get the story. So I said, well, I was in Chico, which is about 2.5 hours south of Shasta in Central Valley, California. And so I said, I'm your guy. I remember going up to Mount Shasta when I was young. My family would go houseboating on Lake Shasta with other families. And so being around Shasta and seeing the mountain was very familiar to me. I used to drink Shasta Cola when I was a kid. Grape flavor was my favorite flavor. But so anyway, so all these things I could look back at as maybe seeds leading me towards this direction. So I said, absolutely, I'll go up there. I paid for the whole thing myself. Didn't even ask for money. I was so excited to go up there. And I met Diane Robbins, and I wound up having a series of interviews with Diane Robbins. And she facilitated a question and answer session between me and Adama, who is supposedly a 20,000-year-old ascended master that's the high priest of this city beneath Mount Shasta that's called Telos. Yes. And, you know, I grew up, I saw a Journey to the Center of the Earth with Pat Boone, you know, where they took like a 6-inch bluebelly lizard and put a different green screen behind it. And it looked like this giant, you know, lizard. And as a kid, it scared the heck out of me, you know. And so that idea of an inner earth or a hollow earth was not new to me, but confronting it in the real world, that maybe this is a real possibility, just lit me up like a candle. So I wound up doing a series of interviews with Diane Robbins. I published a DVD called Inside Mount Shasta with my 2 lectures that I did up at the Best of Mount Shasta event in 2014 and 15. And the end result of those interviews, besides the lectures, is an article I did for Phenomena Magazine in March of 2013. And it's called I'm a PR Agent for the Inner Earth People, ! And what I got out of those talks with Diane and then the Q&A with Adama were 2 main areas. One, that the reason why we die is because we think we're going to die, and we hold the thoughts of death in our head from the moment we're taught about death from when we were a little kid. Maybe our grandpa or grandma dies, or maybe a pet dies. And then we put our parents on the spot and say, you know, Mommy, why did grandma die? And your parents have to come up with some kind of explanation because, you know, now me being at age 54, of course, we don't know what to say about that. But as a kid, you don't know that. So when your mom or your dad or some other family member says, you know, don't worry about that, Bret, everything's going to be okay. Everybody dies. It's just part of our life here. And then they usually just leave it at that. But it's my contention that it's those experiences as a young child where you're most impressionable, where you are programmed to die.
Yep.
You start thinking about death. I used to remember having nightmares about it when I was young after that. And I had to kind of get over that. I got counseled to kind of get through that. But I think it's really obvious that it takes on average about 75 years for your own thoughts to manifest death in your life in some way. So when Adama, through Diane Robbins, told me that the reason why we die is because we dwell on that thought of death. The word is a symbol. Death is a symbol. And that we dwell on that symbol constantly, that the remedy for that is to replace that symbol with the word immortality, and then constantly live in the moment.
I like that.
So if we're constantly in the moment and we get that death thought out of our heads, if we could somehow program immortality into our heads, Adama says that's the key. So that was the first huge thing I got out of those interviews. The other thing was that Diane was a teacher of this philosophy. She was a student of the Rose Academy Ascended Master School. And there's a few different schools that are up around Mount Shasta. She's of the idea that the inner earth people have been seeding the surface for thousands of years, little bit. If my friend William Henderson Everyone called it tiptoe tyranny, well, the good guys, let's say, are tiptoe tyrannying back and slowly trying to wake us up so that all of us together, that the inner earth people could come forward onto the surface, join their family, because we're all related supposedly, and move into ascension together to the fifth dimension. Or whatever, there's different metaphors for it, but that was the the real spark that made me explore the public relations aspect of the inner earth people acting on the surface people. And so that was the basis of the article. I'm a PR agent for the inner earth people, was realizing that when you break down the stories from ancient history to modern times, many themes are common throughout, including these inner earth societies having advanced technology, including UFOs or advanced knowledge of crystals and how to use crystals. Contactee Sheldon Neidl even claims there's crystal cities in the inside earth. Giants is another theme. And of course, long life would be some of the most common themes. And so I began to think, as a public relations major from Chico State University, I literally had a moment like Jordan Maxwell again at Chico State University when E.L. Bernays visited our campus in 1994, right before he passed. He passed like 3 or 4 months later. And he was dating my buddy's mother.
Wow.
So my buddy's mother was his secretary on the East Coast. He was like 30 years her senior. And this is before Viagra. And he, just what a stud, right? And so he's dating my buddy's mom. And I used to razz my buddy that this old guy was, doing it with his mother. And he didn't like that, although I got a kick out of it. But I got to shake E.L. Bernays' hand. And so looking back on that, that was a moment that kind of set me off on my path. And so then here I am now studying the Hollow Earth and realizing that the Hollow Earth people were actually perpetrating a formal public relations campaign upon the surface dwellers towards the goal of ascension for all of us. Excuse me. And so in that article, I just outlined 9 different revelations, I called them, about the inner earth and things that really just struck a nerve with me. But I'm writing a book now based on that article called Agents of Ascension. And I've taken that concept further, where I've taken the actual structure of a PR campaign, put it on the left side of a page, and then the history of the inner earth based on all those stories that you can gather. And it matched up perfectly. Wow. And so it gave me the idea that, not only is the Hollow Earth people, or at least some of the Hollow Earth people, perpetrating a formal public relations campaign upon the surface towards a goal of ascension, but that, shoot, I just lost that thought. But that public relations was not invented on Earth by E.L. Bernays in the 1920s. Because how could it have been if the inner Earth people have been using it for hundreds, if not thousands of years?
Yeah.
So there's a couple books by E.L. Bernays that I haven't been able to get yet, but I have a hunch that he had some kind of a visionary experience, or some kind of a download, or a UFO experience, or maybe an experience like Jordan Maxwell, where some mysterious being in the form of a human came and talked to him and told him about the ideas of public relations, which maybe set him on his course of his life, E.L. Bernays. So, but that kind of blew me away, because I studied public relations in college. Chico State University was a nationally recognized public relations school, which is why, in large part, E.L. Bernays was there. And so I look on my life and I find that parallel with Jordan Maxwell, that I had my own kind of experiences that led me to where I am today, using the major that that I took. I mean, I had no idea that I was going to take public relations as a major, but I was kind of flunking out of Chico State with the business and all its many math classes. I was never great at math. And I just had a buddy that I looked up to who was in public relations. And I asked him to write me a letter to the dean to see if I could switch majors, because I wasn't really working out in business. And that's what did it. At the time, I just saw it as, oh, good, journalism classes. There's like 3 women to 1 man in journalism. I'm like, okay, I could do that. In business, it was totally opposite. It was mostly men. And plus I didn't really get jibe with all the math. And so, it's funny how life works out. We all end up where we're supposed to be. So, but that's my basic story with Diane Robbins. And I'm still friends with her to this day. God bless her heart. I visit her every time I go up to Mount Shasta when she's up for it. And I have a whole family up in Mount Shasta now that I go see 2 or 3 times a year.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah. What you were talking about now is probably what they will find in your book, UFOs and Inner Earth, PR Agents of Ascension.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just kind of shorten that title now and I just call it Agents of Ascension. Okay. Because it's starting to get a little wordy by trying to get all the concepts in the title. And then I thought I had a really good subtitle too. So I didn't want to put UFO or Inner Earth in that. So the title of the book now with the subtitle is Agents of Ascension, within the global struggle for the control of human consciousness, public relations is the ultimate weapon. That's the title and subtitle now. And so that's what I'm working on now. As is characteristic of me in my writing career, I should be further along with it than I am. Life has a way of stepping in and making me do other things, but I should be done with that in a couple months. I know Rob Potter's summer conference is in July, and it was in August the last couple of years, and I was hoping to have it done by August, but he bumped it up. I think because in the last several years there's been fires up in the area, and the smoke kind of chokes out. And so in August, it seems like it's really smoky the last few years. So he bumped it up a little bit to July. And I'm hopefully going to be speaking up there. Right now, I'm an alternate speaker. And so no guarantees I'm going to speak up there, but I'm going to go there. And the people up there are awesome. If I just got back from the New Living Expo, which I did last weekend with 5,000 plus people, it was fun. A little bit of a zoo sometimes, but Mount Shasta is the opposite. 500 people, maybe tops, very intimate lectures, big speakers. And then at nighttime, there's always UFO groups that go out and skywatch, or there's places to hike, Bigfoot sightings up there. People say they see ascended masters roaming the slopes, maybe Lemurians. I mean, it's crazy, the stuff that's up there. But I love it up there. So I'm going whether I speak or not. So
yay. That's great. Good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you said you also have another book in the hopper. So tell us about that one too.
Okay. So my first book is called Song in Your Heart, the story of the search for the lost note. And it's about the role of the roots reggae Rastas, as I define in the book, within a global struggle for the control of human consciousness. So this is book 1 in a 3-part series. This came out in 2008. And the second book, which I don't have a cover for yet, any day now I should have a cover for it, is called Tales of a Heavy Heart, UFOs, Magic, and Impending Doom. And it's the continuing role, it's a story about the continuing role of the roots reggae Rastas in terms of a global struggle for the control of human consciousness. So, I always loved reggae music. I was a big Bob Marley fan through high school and college. In college, I kind of spread out to other roots reggae artists. I mean, literally, for the longest time, I only thought there was Bob Marley. But there's Jimmy Cliff and Third World and Wailing Souls and just Morgan Heritage. It goes on and on and on, right? There's this whole world of roots reggae music. And many of them are of the Rastafari faith. They believe that Jesus has already come back and had the second coming, and it was in the form of Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia from 1930 to about 1968, I think, is when he got deposed by the Marxist guy. I forget what his name was, but just fascinating, right? And so I started doing these interviews in Chico when I got out of college with at this music magazine called Synthesis Magazine. And these reggae interviews just dropped in my lap because no one could understand what they were talking about when they would use their thick patois accents, right? It's the rhythm man, blah, blah, blah. This, they have it's this whole language behind it. And so they're like, oh, we'll just give it to Bret. And I'm like, I'll take it. You're right. So my very first big reggae interview was with the bass player of the Wailers, Bob Marley's original band.
Wow.
Or the band he became famous with, right? And so Aston Family Man Barrett was considered to be a shaman. He because he controlled the rhythm, he could dictate whether or not the audience was going to have an altered state of expansion of consciousness, kind of a thing, or when to do that or when not to do that, make you happy, make you sad, based on his rhythm. And so that was kind of the philosophy in the band, is that there was a band leader that did that. And so when I talked with Aston Family Man Barrett, I spent a lot of time going, right. And then when he would pause, I would just kind of take that as a sign, okay, ask another question. But really, after I got the tape, I went to a local reggae bass player in Chico, DJ Boomshot. I'll be forever grateful for him translating the interview for me so that I could actually understand what this guy was saying.
Wow.
But what this guy was saying was similar to what Jordan Maxwell would say, that there was forces on Earth that were working against humanity, that there was material forces that were the end result of those spiritual forces, like the UN, United Nations, or the IMF, International Monetary Fund. These kinds of organizations did not have the best interests of humanity in mind. And so instead of reading a lot of books, these reggae guys would drum. They would, of course, many of them would smoke marijuana, and they would commune with God in their own way. So it was fascinating to me that without reading a lot of books, that they came to the same conclusion as, say, someone like Jordan Maxwell or David Icke or Michael Tsarion, for example, or Jim Mars, because they were dead on. So instead of writing a bunch of books or even reading a bunch of books, they would write songs and then sing about it. So they would go to these concerts. So reggae concerts now took on a whole different meaning for me, because literally what their job was as Rastafarian roots reggae musicians, hence the term roots reggae Rastas, as I describe in the book. It's not all the roots reggae guys are Rastafarian, and not all Rastafarians are roots reggae musicians, but the ones that are, those are the roots reggae Rastas. Well, when they would do shows at like giant famous reggae festivals like Reggae on the River, which later became Reggae Rising, I saw a big show on Mount Shasta called, I called it Reggae on the Mountain. I wrote an article about it in the local paper. But when they were at these shows, they weren't just there as like rock stars, even though that may be one level. They were there on a spiritual mission to alter consciousness in the heart of what they called Babylon. And so using the biblical metaphor of Babylon being the most evil city on the earth, they saw the United States, or maybe larger, the Western world, modern society, as a modern form of Babylon. And so their idea was, their strategy was, let's go right to the heart of it. Let's go sing these songs with these certain rhythms that would unlock the children of Babylon's consciousness, and then we'll fill it with more true knowledge. And so that's when I realized that's what these guys are doing. And I would explain this like I just did to you guys in my interviews with these guys. They would just light up and be like, oh my God, he gets it. So that's the idea behind this trilogy. So book 1, Song in Your Heart, the story of the search for the lost note. Book 2 is called Tales of a Heavy Heart, UFOs, Magic, and Impending Doom. I'm going to get right back on that book as soon as I'm done with Agents of Ascension, and hopefully we'll have them both done by the end of the year. And then it's a trilogy, and the third book is called The Hyperdimensional Hydrosonic Photovoltaic Heart.
Wow.
And I haven't really decided on the subtitle yet, but it's about a little Jordan Maxwell influence there too, because it's going to be about the sun and how the sunlight affects things on Earth. It's about hyperdimensions, and it's about water and music and consciousness. All those things, water and light and other dimensions, all affect our consciousness in various ways. And the roots reggae guys, they're in on this because their approach to all this is through sound and vibration. and they call it the heartbeat rhythm. The rhythm man is what they'll
Yes.
say in patois. And so many of the roots reggae songs you can tell by the characteristic heartbeat rhythm, what they call the Nyabingi. Pump,
Yes.
pump, pump, pump,
Yes.
pump, pump. It's like it's mimicking the heartbeat. And so, like what guys like Aston Family Man Barrett would do is he would either speed up that heartbeat or lower that heartbeat, and that would produce different effects on the listener.
I love that.
So these concerts are not just concerts; they're actually spiritual rituals designed to affect consciousness on a mass scale, all towards, similar to the Inner Earth people, towards bringing everybody together, waking ourselves up, seeing who we really are, teaching us about our roots, the true roots that we're not taught in school, and all towards that goal of ascension, essentially.
It's
So
advanced souls that is making that happen.
I really think so. Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
Bob Marley, he was just the tip of the iceberg. Matter of fact, Bob Marley, his version of this was more watered down from how really more thick the patois is in Jamaica, and that's what made it more accessible to the children of Babylon, let's say, and to around the world. But you get into someone like Burning Spear, who's another legend. He's like 85 years old right now, fit as he just nails, no body fat, and he's got like 40 plus albums out. A little harder to access because he's got that thick patois, but the message is still there. He's got legendary songs. I'm sorry, go ahead, Augie.
Yeah, I see now that we are getting to the end of the show here, so I guess the fun is over for this time. But
I'm sorry it's over.
yeah, well, when we get a little further into your books here, I do want you back because we want to know more about this.
Yeah, but Bret, tell everybody where they can find you and where they can find your books.
Right now I'm on Facebook as I build my third website. The first two got hacked, so I kind of consider that a badge of honor, like Jordan getting cut off on Coast to Coast. So, but right now, Facebook, it's Bret.Luter. Come drop me a line. I post most of my stuff there. I also got a new podcast called The Bret Luter Show. Right now, it's just on BitChute, but I also posted on Facebook. Soon it will be Rumble, eTalk TV, and a couple others. And so until the website gets up, that will be esotericguide.us. Facebook is the place to find me. And I just ordered another 100 copies of Song in Your Heart. So those will be $25. I'll pay the shipping. So please, everyone, forget your electric bills and buying food. Just buy my stuff. And yeah, right. So anyway, find me on Facebook. Ask me lots of questions. I love interacting with people and laying it down, just like Jordan did. You know.
Spell your last name, Bret. Spell your last name, please.
Lueder.
Perfect. Bret Luter, guys.
There you go.
Catch him on Facebook. Yeah. Thank you so much, Bret.
All right.
Always a pleasure.
So much more than just a show happened tonight. And I hope I get to tell you that again sometime. But thank you so much. Thank you.
I'll look forward to that. Okay, you guys have a great night.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you very much. Until then, be good to each other and live long and prosper.